Good morning, people. It's June 1st, 2020, and our nation is in deep trouble. There's a lot going on that is disturbing and scary and depressing because it looks like we're falling into disorganization and chaos. We're fighting and blaming, and we're not doing the good work we love to do. That's what Americans really love to do. Americans like to get things done that need to be done, make sure everybody's taken care of. But we're a mess right now. We have a physical disease, the coronavirus. We have a cultural disease, racism, that's been with us ever since this country was a colony in the 1600s. We have economic problems. We have environmental problems. And none of these problems are going to be properly addressed by the two-party system, because the two-party system is very old and dysfunctional and stale and corrupt. Institutions have a lifespan. They grow, they become stale and rigid and stuck and old and irrelevant and obsolete. And that's what's happened to the two-party system. It does not work. The original promise of the two-party system is that it would protect us from extremism. Now, if your eyes are open and your brain is engaged, you do not see the two-party system protecting us from extremism. 40% of the voters do not vote, and that has been true since 1900, and it's been documented. And non-voters have been interviewed and asked why they don't vote, and they say it's because I don't want to vote for a Democrat. I don't want to vote for a Republican. They're the only two parties that can win any meaningful election. I don't see the point in voting for a third party because they don't usually accomplish anything. It's rare. Bernie Sanders is rare, very rare. Yeah, he got elected to be a representative and a senator, and he's a wonderful man, and he's brilliant, and he's smart, and he could have been and should have been a presidential candidate in another party, the Progressive Party, for example. And people would have had a chance to vote for him. But we don't have a multi-party system. We have a rigid, stuck system, stuck on every election being like a boxing match or a football game or two gladiators fighting to the death. There's one winner and one loser. It was never intended to be that way. Elections are not supposed to have just one winner and everybody else is a loser. Everybody who gets some votes is supposed to get something for their votes. When you vote, you're speaking. The candidates are supposed to respond. The government is supposed to respond. If a party gets 5% of the vote or 10% or 15%, you're not supposed to get told in a democracy you lost, therefore you get nothing. You're on the outside, you're excluded, you have no influence, you have no power. No, you have power because you voted, because you said what you wanted, because you're organized. And that's the way a real democracy works, with many parties competing. We have no parties competing anymore. We just have two crazy organizations who just accuse and have trials and hearings, and they cause yelling and screaming and insulting. It's devolved. It's fallen apart. It does not work. But we could have a revolution by vote if the 40% who do not usually vote woke up and decided that it's time for them to do something. It's time for them to participate. It's time for them to show that the reason they don't vote is not just because they're apathetic or don't care or lazy or selfish. That's what the nobility says. The nobility who are protected by the two-party system. The two-party system makes sure that we have minority rule. Candidates who are elected by 30% of the electorate every election. Maybe 33%, maybe a third. Sometimes a little more, but usually it's between 30 and 35%. So we have minority rule for the past 120 years. Are you going to learn something from that? Okay, so I'm an old man, but I'm an informed voter. I'm an informed citizen. I have been observing American politics since 1956 when I had a paper route. I watched John F. Kennedy on television. I read his book, Profiles in Courage, and I've been addicted ever since. I have been watching all these years, and I'm telling you, it's okay to protest. Just understand your protest is not going to be effective. It's okay to call on the phone, to write letters, to talk. It's not going to work. It didn't work in 1865. It didn't work in 1965. And it's not going to work in 2020. They don't have to listen. They have an institution and a system called the two-party system, which is set up so that they can win elections whether they listen to you or not. They don't have to listen. The system is the problem. We don't have more corruption than any other country. We don't have more selfishness than any other country. We have good people everywhere, all over the country. North, south, east, west, on the coast, and in the center. We are good people. It's the system that is the problem. We have a horrible election system that doesn't work. So those who don't vote want reforms. You want election reforms. You want a different system. You want a better system. You want an election system that works. You want majority rule. And you should have majority rule because the Constitution promised it. The Constitution actually says, many people don't know this, the federal government guarantees the states, which means the people, a Republican form of government. What is a Republican form of government? You know, you can find that text in the Constitution. It's plain English. A Republican form of government means majority rule. How do you get majority rule? Everybody has to vote. That's why the Real Democracy Party recommends and proposes and demands mandatory voting. It's just like the obligation of jury duty. In order for everybody to have a trial by jury, if they're accused of a crime, everyone has to be available to serve on a jury. And that's a state law in every state. You are obligated. It's mandatory. So if we are supposed to have majority rule according to our Constitution, then voting should be mandatory. Obviously, people are not going to vote if it's not mandatory. It's all spelled out in great detail. All the information you need is at the Real Democracy Party, like one word, .org. That is where you will learn about the John Manamus campaign and the revolution by vote, which you can be. You can be the revolution by vote so that we can avoid a revolution by violence. Please take this seriously. Please check it out. Think about the time you spend on your phone and looking at a screen. Think about the people who risk their lives to defend your freedom, our freedom. Think about all the work that's done so that we have all the good life we normally have in the United States of America when things are working right. I'm not asking you to risk your life to go into battle. I'm asking you to learn about voting, whatever it is you need to learn. Vote Smart is a great resource. There's others, Vote for 11, Head Count. There's many resources. Every state has resources about voting. Learn about the candidates. Make decisions. I worked for years, every morning, getting up and setting up this system, creating the political party with Henry Jackson and other friends, the political party called the Real Democracy Party. I did all the tedious paperwork that you have to do to be a presidential candidate, and I am an official presidential candidate. But I did it so that you can vote for what you really want. You can vote to retire the two-party system and demand election reforms. a long list of important election reforms that would make the two-party system obsolete, and our system would no longer be vulnerable to all this corruption and this mess where rich people with money buy candidates and destroy our government. That's exactly what has been happening since 2016. So I'm not really telling you how to vote. I'm just begging you to vote. And to motivate you, to encourage you to vote, I set up this system, which is like a referendum. So that in 2020, when you write in, if you write in John Manimus, you are participating in a kind of referendum. You are voting against the two-party system and for election reforms, rank choice voting, fusion voting, party coalitions, mandatory voting, no disqualification of ballots by party officials who are monitoring elections, supposedly monitoring elections, but they are also throwing out ballots for a variety of invalid reasons. So we need rules, federal rules if necessary, that only a judge can disqualify a ballot. Because why? Constitution says we will not lose property or freedom without due process. Well, due process means judicial process. And if you lose your vote, you're losing your property and your freedom because you're paying taxes and you're not being represented. You're not being represented if you weren't permitted to vote. You have taxation without representation. You have taxation without accountability. Please think about it. Please do some research. Please check it out. Take the time. Your country is in great danger. Anyone who studies history knows that we are repeating the pattern that occurred in Germany in the 1920s and the 1930s, when people became frustrated and afraid and cowardly and wanted simple solutions. Make Germany great again, make us all white, make us all pure, which is nonsense. Racial purists, white supremacists, make no sense. If we did what they suggest and we had, quote, a pure white race, we would become idiots. We would be marrying our cousins. A healthy society does not marry only people who are light, exactly like yourself. We marry people who are different because that's how human society has thrived for thousands and thousands of years. You don't want to be racially pure. You want new blood. New blood is what makes us strong and healthy. That's the story of America. Why did Americans grow taller and healthier? Why did we prevail in World War I and World War II? Why do we have great technology and a lot of wonderful things, although we've made some mistakes with some bad science and we miscalculated on the production of carbon dioxide and methane? It's something we can fix, but we'll fix it only if we continue to be a healthy community and a healthy nation, and that means new blood, mongrels, mixed ethnic groups, Irish marrying Swedish, Jews marrying Catholics, black marrying white, Mexican marrying English. This is why we are great, because we want everyone and everything. We want to be whole. We want to be complete. We don't want to be isolated, separated. We want everyone to belong. We need to have everyone vote. We need to have you, if you have been a non-voter and you've been reluctant to vote and you hate our system, please, you can save us. You can save your country and you can save the world. You can make America great again by making America responsible again. I'm begging you to hear me. Democracy is not something you believe in. Democracy is not something you hear about or read about or talk about. Democracy is something that you do. And if you are not voting, you are not doing it. This is something a small group of people has done for you. We've created this possibility for you to vote as though you're voting in a referendum. Just register to vote. You'll be free to vote any way you like in November. And I believe you will be truly sad and regretful if you don't register. And all you can do is sit on the sidelines and watch your country fall into a whirlpool of disaster. You can save it by voting. You can be the revolution by vote. Thank you.